Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, March 25th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by our Alex Gleitman. Alex, so much recruiting to get to. We'll get to a little bit of team coverage later in the show, but let's start with some recruiting. Wide receiver Trevon Lindsey from Corona, California, is beginning his unofficial visit to Ohio State today. In fact, looks like he took the red-eye flight. He flew overnight from California, landed in Columbus at 7 a.m. today. He's the number 5 wide receiver in the country, number 21 overall prospect in the country. Obviously, he'd be a big-time get for the Buckeyes. Only 5'9", 180 pounds. Alex, looking at the crystal ball, looks like Ohio State is a long shot. They're only getting 6% of the crystal ball. USC leads at 44%. Is the crystal ball picks a little outdated, or are the Buckeyes an extreme long shot here?
No, they're definitely not a long shot. I mean, I think, Ohio State and USC are the top 2 schools. I think when Trevon transferred from Bishop Gorman back home to the LA area in Centennial, he definitely made it very clear that he's going to get to visit USC a lot, and that they were one of his favorites. And he took an unofficial visit there recently and came away really liking it. Obviously, Steve Wilfong put his crystal ball in for the Trojans, and that, to me, carries a lot of weight. He spoke to him out at a 7-on-7 pylon event, and he kind of did that after that. So, Steve clearly thinks USC's a little bit above Ohio State, but I don't think the gap's big, and I think this visit's going to be absolutely huge. I think you factor in that his good friend Hasel Garrett and someone he considers a brother in Tate Martell now both potentially could be Buckeyes. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show, but I think Ohio State's in a really good spot coming into this visit. I don't think this recruitment's ending anytime soon. I actually know his best relationship is with Zach Smith, and I think, honestly, if I had to put a crystal ball in today, I don't have one in, I would put Ohio State in. Completely unbiased. I just think that, the relationship he has with Zach Smith, I know is really strong. And I think, the allure of playing for Urban Meyer in a system, to me, that fits his skill set better or the best out of anywhere in the country. I think, it's eventually going to win out, if he's willing to go away from home, which he hasn't shown any reservations about to this point.
You mentioned Tate Martell, the quarterback from Bishop Gorman. He was visiting Ohio State yesterday. I was looking for him out there when I was at practice. I didn't see him. I did see Hasel Garrett and a few others, Isaiah Pryor. Did not see Tate Martell, but I know he was there. What are you hearing about this visit? How's it going? Where do you think he's going to end up? How much of a chance does Ohio State have? Just tell the listeners what they need to know about Tate Martell's visit so far.
Yeah, so everything I've heard is that Tate Martell's visit's gone absolutely outstanding. He's loving Ohio State. His grandfather actually graduated from Ohio State in 1968, still lives in Ohio. I know he was there on the visit. His father was with him. His mother, who is not there, but her family, a lot of them live in Ohio. I think some of them went to Ohio State as well. So there's ties there. And coming into the visit, Tate said Ohio State was number 2 on his list behind Texas A&M, where he's committed. And after speaking to a lot of people at Ohio State and at out west, goes to school at Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, I get the feeling he's not going to end up signing with Texas A&M. I'm not saying that means he signs with Ohio State, but right now, with Ohio State being number 2 coming off this great visit, I think you'd have to have Ohio State as the pick today if you don't think he's going to sign with Texas A&M. And I think you saw a lot of people. I think there was at least 4 or 5 crystal balls switched from Texas A&M to Ohio State yesterday. So that, to me, obviously says a lot. I think, I'm not ready to put in – I picked Texas A&M. I knew that's where he was going to commit when he did commit. I'm not ready to flip that just yet. I want to kind of see how the dust settles after this visit, see where else he chooses to visit. I don't think, he could make a quick decision. I think the plan for him was kind of to see how things go, at least potentially through the summer, possibly decommit, maybe take some official visits in the fall, and then, kind of make a final decision. But just with the way Texas A&M, that program is going, and it just seems like it's going in a southward direction. And, Ohio State, like as Steve said on the BM5 yesterday, Tate Martell is kind of a smaller guy. Who knows what his pro stock is going to be? But his college ability to be a great college quarterback, I think, is through the roof in a spread offense system like Ohio State's.
And that's all Ohio State fans care about. I mean, look at J.T. Barrett. Let's project him as a pro quarterback. I'm not sure how good he would be in the pros. I know in college, J.T. Barrett is a phenomenal college quarterback, and he's perfect for Urban Meyer's offense. So, yeah, I really don't care how these guys project as NFL players. Especially when we're talking about college quarterbacks. There's a lot of guys that are great college quarterbacks that can't play quarterback in the NFL. So we'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Speaking of quarterbacks,
Troy Smith, you would take Troy Smith all over again, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Rex Kern was drafted as a defensive back, another one of the best quarterbacks in Ohio State history who wore the number 10. Yeah, Troy Smith, now I'm still perplexed by that. I thought even with his, he wasn't a tall guy. I won't call him short. He's 6 foot even. He's short for a quarterback. But I thought with his arm strength, and he was a smart guy and he was tough, I thought Troy Smith would at least last as a backup quarterback in the NFL. Boy, I was wrong about that. He couldn't even make it in Canada.
I think with Troy, I think if he really wanted to be a career backup in the NFL, I think he probably could have been. He went into that training camp with the Ravens as the number 1 guy that I think it was Flacco's rookie year, and then he got tonsillitis and he had to miss training camp, and Flacco came in and he played really well, and the rest is history, and won a Super Bowl, so maybe it was the best thing that happened to the Ravens. But I think things might have been a little bit different for Troy Smith if he never had tonsillitis and he was able to kind of take that job and run with it, knowing he was the number 1 guy going in. But I guess we'll never know now.
He did get another chance a couple years later. He started like 40 games for the 49ers. Mike Singletary seemed to like him. Actually, as Alex Smith started that year, Troy Smith actually beat him out midway through, and then had a couple good games, and then had some rough games, and then just never got a chance again. He actually went off on Singletary on the sideline one time, and that was pretty much it for him.
Yeah, it's Mike Singletary though, so I think you got to give him a pass.
So we keep hearing about how spaces are tight for the 2017 class. We keep hearing about, they're pretty good. They're set at quarterback. They got Joe Burrow in the 2015 class, Dwayne Haskins in the 2016 class. Even if they just take Danny Clark in the 2017 class, that's fine because numbers are tight. They're good at quarterback. Now with them going after Tate Martell as hard as they are, makes me wonder where things stand with Danny Clark. And then Danny Clark visits Michigan State now. His dad told Bill Kurlick there's nothing to that he's just hanging out with some other elite athletes and no big deal there. But, Alex, let's cut through the BS. What does this mean for Danny Clark at Ohio State when numbers are already tight? They have a quarterback in the class. They just have signed 2 great quarterbacks the last 2 years. For them to be going after Tate Martell, to me, that shows me that they're not sold on Danny Clark. I could be wrong. Set me straight.
Well, I'll say this. First, I do know Jeff Clark, Danny's dad, runs a training group called Unrivaled Athletes in, the Akron, Canton area. And he did announce actually a couple weeks ago that he would be taking the group to Michigan State and Notre Dame. I'm sure they'll be going to one of the Ohio State camps as well, or doing their own day at Ohio State, maybe as early as this Saturday when Danny and Todd are going up there. But I will say, I think the timing is very unique in the sense that you had Tate Martell, 2017 quarterback. You had Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a 2018 quarterback. You had Phil Jurkovec, another elite 2018 quarterback on campus yesterday while Danny's at Michigan State. So I can certainly see how that looks, but I think Danny's going to be at Michigan State with the Unrivaled group. I think he's going to be at Notre Dame with them. I think he'll be at Ohio State with them. So I don't think that visit yesterday necessarily means anything as far as Danny Clark standing with Ohio State. That said, I do know that, if space permitted, I know that Ohio State, in addition to Danny Clark, would love to bring in another quarterback because, right now the way I see it, it's Joe Burrow and it's Dwayne Haskins. And they're hoping at least one of those guys, if not 2 of them, can be their quarterbacks after J.T. Barrett. Now, after that, you're going to have potentially, by the time 2017 guys get on campus, you're going to have Stephen Collier at that point as a redshirt junior. So by the time he's gone, by the time those 2017 guys actually get a chance to see the field with Burrow, Haskins, and potentially Collier ahead of them. So after those 2, there's really nothing. And I think, you want at least 4 quarterbacks, scholarship quarterbacks on your roster. So I think, ideally they would love to bring in 2 in 2017. I'm not sure what space is going to be, but I think you're right to some extent. I think Danny Clark was offered very early. He was a surefire stud, the only freshman starter ever at Massillon, Washington. And he has a solid freshman year, and not very good sophomore year, but bounces back when he transfers to Hoban for his junior year, a little bit more structure, better coaching situation, things of that, better playmakers around him. And he had a pretty solid year last year, and he's shown steps in the right direction. I'm not saying Ohio State's, starting to go down the road of, maybe we should, look around and tell Danny to find another home. I'm not sure that's going to be the case. But I do think that Ohio State wants to make sure that they do have a no doubt about it prospect behind Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins. And, they've shown no matter who they have at what positions, they're right now they have J.K. Dobbins and Todd Sibley at running back. You can close your class there, and everyone in the country would be very happy with that. But they're still going after Cam Akers and Najee Harris and, some other elite national running backs. So I think you just kind of got to wait and see how this thing goes. I could potentially see 2 quarterbacks. Let's cross that bridge when it happens. Let's see Tate Martell want to commit to Ohio State or something along those lines and see where things stand at that point with the class and room in the 2017 cycle.
Defensive tackle Hasel Garrett obviously is verbally committed to Ohio State. He committed to Ohio State without even visiting campus, but now he's here all week. He's been here all week. I saw him at practice yesterday, as I said, took a picture of him, and he seemed like he was just elated to be there. Now, I know he had a great time in his Notre Dame visit, as Steve Wiltfong talked about yesterday on the show, but I tell you, just seeing the way he interacts, I know you can get caught up in the moment and everything, but he's already committed to Ohio State, Alex, and just watching him interact with current players, former players, coaching staff, just enjoying himself. Now that he's been in Columbus at Ohio State for a full week, I'm going to be very surprised if he decommits. I'm curious to get your take. What are you hearing about the visit? Do you think he'll stay with the Buckeyes? Is there anything you want to say about Hasel Garrett?
No, I would be very surprised, too. I actually dropped a VIP nugget a couple days ago on the front row, and ultimately the gist of it was that, Hasel's there with his parents, and they're bonding with Larry Johnson and Urban Meyer, and they're absolutely having a great time. Obviously, Isaiah Pryor and Marcus Williamson were up on campus a little bit this week, so him getting to spend time with them was definitely key. I just kind of being around the program, his personality fits in very well with the competitive nature and intensity at Ohio State. Listen, there's no doubt he probably likes Notre Dame. I mean, what kid goes to a college visit and gets to, hang out and watch big-time college football practice and spend time with, big-time college coaches and get to hang out with the players and go out a little bit and doesn't have a good time. And I do think Notre Dame would be the state to Ohio State if Hasel were kind of going to be up in the air. But, this kid is staying on a 5-day visit. I think if he comes away out of this visit and he isn't sure, Ohio State couldn't do anything more. They had him for a 5-day visit, but I don't think that's going to be the case from everything I'm hearing, both on the Ohio State side and Haskell side. I'm just hearing rave reviews on this visit, and Ohio State seems pretty confident that they're going to hang on to him.
All right, switching gears to some team coverage, we'll end with this. A couple defensive backs are really drawing my attention, that's for sure. Marshawn Lattimore and Malik Hooker. Marshawn Lattimore, of course, big-time prospect coming out of Cleveland Glenville, had chronic hamstring issues. The coaches hope that he's over it. He's running with the first team. In fact, Urban Meyer says he's really high in the top 3 corners, Garyon Conley, Marshawn Lattimore, and Denzel Ward. But then we talked to Kerry Combs yesterday, and he said, he still is nervous every time Marshawn turns and cuts it loose to try and cover a deep ball. He's just worried that, one of those hamstrings are going to give out on him. So the coaches are still worried about it, but they're hoping that Marshawn Lattimore will stay healthy. At least he's healthy right now, because they feel like if he's healthy, he is going to be a stud. And then Malik Hooker at safety, he is locked into a starting safety spot, it looks to me. And, Alex, it doesn't matter which coach you talk to. People are talking about Malik Hooker left and right, Urban Meyer, Greg Schiano. We're talking to Kerry Combs yesterday. He wasn't even talking about the safeties. He was just talking about the corners. Then he mentioned Malik Hooker at safety, how well he's playing. So talk about Malik Hooker and Malik Hooker. I think those are the 2 of the biggest storylines of spring and 2 of the more encouraging storylines of spring for Ohio State.
Yeah, I'll start with Hooker. Everything I've heard is just rave reviews. I've heard Greg Schiano absolutely loves him. To Greg, this is, if he could create a safety to play in his defense, it would be Malik Hooker. And, it's just great to see Malik. He's kind of like a raw athlete coming out of high school, played basketball most of his life, kind of was a late bloomer type to the game of football. And just to see him kind of put it all together, learn over the last few years, and it seems like a light bulb finally came on. Obviously, we'll see what happens when, the first whistle blows in the fall. But I think Malik Hooker is, as you said, it almost seems like he's locked into a safety spot, and then it's going to be up to, a Damon Webb or an Eric Smith or Cam Burrows to try to claim that other spot. So that will definitely be interesting to watch. But, only great things I'm hearing on Malik Hooker, and I'm really excited to see him in action. And then, talking about Marshawn Lattimore, it's been tough. This was a kid who I think everyone was super excited about coming out of high school. He was an Army All-American at Glenville. He was a tremendous playmaker. I always thought he should have been an offensive player at receiver. I just thought he was so smooth with the ball in his hands. But, they felt defensive back and cornerback is where he could help the team the most. And he's had issues with those hamstrings. I was told by a source, it's pretty tied into Glenville, that, maybe Marshawn didn't take his, I don't want to make him look bad that he didn't take his rehab or or preparation and stuff in his career, earlier in his career too seriously. But I think he finally, from what I was told, he finally gets it. He started doing some things outside of, the normal stuff like yoga and other things to enhance his flexibility and, just strengthen those muscles. And apparently it's paying off. He's finally, after kind of a minor setback earlier in the winter, he seems like he's finally healthy. As he said, it's the best he's felt in a really long time in your interview with him yesterday. And I think, I agree with Combs. I mean, every turn he makes, every step he takes, everyone's going to be nervous. So I think you just kind of have to hope for the best. Worst case scenario, Damon Webb knows how to play the cornerback position. You can always slide him back there. And you got some good young guys ready to help contribute. But at the same time, I think every time Marshawn Lattimore's out on that field, you're going to be pretty nervous. I think he's going to end up being, probably him and Denzel Ward are going to have a good battle for that second cornerback spot. But, if Marshawn could get on the field and stay healthy, he could be a very special player.
No doubt about it. Great wisdom, as always, from Alex Gleitman. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thanks, Dave. Always love being on, and have a good weekend, everyone.